Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. Juve, Abaluba yeah, yeah, Abaluba yeah, Abaluba. King gang 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 is Juve. King gang 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 is Juve. Spirit rise come to touch the sun. Darkness pass and the morning come. We done pay homage to we ancestors. We done do the ritual for the libation. So we call in the warriors to stand on guard to protect and preserve this tradition. As we fill each heart, every hollow drum with love. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. You ready for turn you round? The warriors coming down. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. You ready for turn you round? The warriors coming down. King gang 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 is Juve. King gang 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 is Juve. Iron and steel set ablaze to the dawn. No reason to shelter or run from the storm. The drum call anointing every move we make. The rhythm commanding blood and mind to awake. You can't help but answer this clarion call. Not one man must stumble, not one must fall. Unmasking the spirit from one come all with love. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning come. You ready for turn you round? The warriors coming down. Awake, warriors awake, Juve morning.
Good morning and welcome to the Bubb Report. Last week Saturday, several Grenadian WhatsApp group chats were abuzz with rumors and claims of a massive COVID-19 spike on the island, stemming from an alleged cluster spread at the multinational Sandals Resort on the south of the island, employer of close to 600 non-unionized Grenadian workers and beneficiary of the Government of Grenada's Pure Safe Travel Accommodation Certificate, a carve-out in the entry protocols for all-inclusive resorts in the country. It was Carib Update News Service and the Grenada Broadcasting Network who broke the news first to the Grenadian public, to be confirmed later that day with an afternoon presser from the Ministry of Health that these rumors were in fact true.
From the SU Windrep Lab, a total of 26 new cases of COVID-19, 26 new COVID-19 infections were identified. 13 of these cases were close contacts of family contacts of case number 44, which was one of the cases, the local case that was identified the day before.
Since news of the COVID spike went viral with COVID-19 patient 44, a sense of angst set in on an island that has had the distinction of keeping the virus at bay, with 0 deaths and less than 100 positive cases in total.
Doctor, I must not tell lies and talk the truth.
You all have one responsibility, not two, one responsibility, because you open the airport. That responsibility is to protect the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique.
To be blamed. The government has to take responsibility, not Sandals. Sandals don't run Grenada. Sandals can determine who is tested at the airport and who is not tested at the airport. This is an abdication of responsibility.
Also, there has been a torrent of finger pointing by all sides, with blame being ascribed to all parties in this affair. After the government of Grenada confirmed that Sandals was perhaps the source of this latest spike, the multinational corporation responded with a tirade, saying in part, quote, "We were dismayed to see the chief medical officer and the Minister of Health host a press briefing at a time of limited facts and information to insinuate any lapse of protocols on our part," unquote. As for the government of Grenada, they too lashed out at Carib Update News Service with a not-so-subtle threat of libel action for their reporting on this issue.
Their stalling comes 24 hours after the Keith Mitchell administration threatened Carib Update with legal action for its reporting.
As a result of this alarming spike, there are now 45 active cases of COVID-19 on the island, with results pending for almost 1,500 residents who have undergone testing in the past week. Also on the Bubb Report, in the spirit of the Yuletide season, we're happy to bring some holiday cheer with Grenada's most respected cultural ambassador, musician, and calypsonian, Edson Mitchell, the Ajamu. Ajamu will reflect with us on the challenges of 2020, his musical accomplishments this year, and plans for the future. We also welcome our other guests, Attorney Ruggles Ferguson, Jerry Rappaport of the Grenada Hotel and Tourism Association, and Senator Andre Lewis, Labour's representative in the Upper House of Parliament. It's Sunday, December 20th, 2020, and we welcome you to the Bubb Report. A pleasant good morning to one and all. It is the holiday season. Let me wish all of you a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and for whatever other holidays you celebrate, this is a time for gift giving, merry making, and all of that good stuff. Of course, we are celebrating these holidays under some very difficult and sad circumstances, given the challenges that we confronted in 2021. But first, before we go to our first guest this morning, I wish to take this opportunity to extend my deepest condolences to the Beswick family of River Road, Motley Hill area, and the loss of Kerry Beswick, who died tragically in an accident a couple of days ago in Grenada. I got to know Kerry and her sister as a neighbor when I lived for a brief moment on Motley Hill in the 90s. And then in the late 90s, we were actually schoolmates at the T.A. Marichaud Community College. I therefore want to bring your attention to a GoFundMe page that was set up to offset costs associated with her funeral expenses. I will be pinning the link in the comments section. And I therefore want to, again, extend my deepest condolences to the family. But I am very happy actually to welcome my first guest this morning. He is none other than Kingman, Edson Mitchell, the Ajamu. Ajamu, I tell people I always had a bias for you. I would always back you in competition. So it's good to see you here, brother. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you.
We family, man.
We are family. They don't know that. They don't know you have St. David's roots, You have St. David's roots. St. Andrew's
Yes,
adopted,
sir.
but you're St. David's man. You're a Pomerose man too.
Hey, I'm a Pomerose man. Pomerose is good.
That's right.
St. David's, Mama Candy's in St. Andrews or St. Andrews. We don't discriminate. I'm from all over the place.
All love. It's all love. It's all love. It's all love. All right, Jamo, let us get into it. Now, 2020, as I said before, this has been a challenging year for us globally. It has also been an especially challenging year for the Grenadian community. But you did something very special for us this year. And I think for me, it was such a heartwarming gesture to see you produce that single, Show Compassion, earlier this year. Tell me, Ajamu, what went into your thought process for producing that album, for that single?
Actually, the idea came from a friend of mine, Troy Garvey.
Mm-hmm.
He called me. Well, let me say this. In April, I had lost my dad.
Yeah.
And me being there in Grenada, I was away from my family, and that took a real toll on me.
Yeah.
So usually when I'm like that, I would always find refuge in my music. So I started spending a lot of time in studio, and I decided to start writing, So I wrote this tribute to my dad, and shortly after I released the tribute, Troy Garvey called me and he said, John, I don't know what's going on with you up there, but it seemed like your creative juice is flowing, Why don't you try to do something, write a song that you can use up some of the local artists to do something as a contribution for what's going on now, to give people some sort of hope, And I thought, wow, that's a good idea, But I remember I had a song that I started writing. I started working on it, and I thought that this song would be kind of down that alley, I could have probably sung it to make it suit that kind of thing, But I couldn't find the song, and I had sent it to my nephew, Mr. Roots, so he could do some jump program on it for me, and he couldn't find it neither. I couldn't even remember the title of the song. So if I had the name of the song, probably he would find it, but I couldn't find it because I couldn't find the name. And I said, you know what? Let me just write a new song. So almost immediately I got on the idea, and it was before the day up. I think it was when I sent back a draft of what I come up with the lyrics for the verse and chorus. And I sent it to Troy Garvey, and he was like happy with everything. And I said, you know what? So let me try and get as much people involved in this. And that's when I started calling different artists to be a part of it. And honestly, I never saw it coming, but that was a pretty dangerous move that I was intending to make.
You say dangerous.
When I say that, because in order for me to produce the song in the middle of this COVID-19, this lockdown,
right,
it means that I would have to get people together, because it's a teamwork, And then I was like, wow, so how would we do that? And then I had to tap into people all over. I had certain artists, they had their own little setup at home, and they had to record the vocals and send it up to me, and so. Well, some of them we were able to use, some we were not able to use, because me, it have to be at a certain standard,
Quality.
And so we had to put things in place, how we're gonna get all these people to come in and do the recording. But thank God we were able to do it. Nobody contracted the virus, and now this is a piece of work that I feel so happy about. I think this has been the most significant piece of production that I did. Not any of my own song or anything that I did for anybody. And I did some production for people and myself. But this one, because the nature of the song, and the input from so many different people, and there was a kind of electrical, thing around that, and then to crown it off now, when Shama Wells and the people from the Cultural Foundation, they contacted me, was to develop some kind of idea like that. And I said, well, what do you know? I already have something that's almost ready to release. And they said, wow, well, let's get on board, And then the final thing was that they were able to come and get on board and put the thing under the umbrella of Grenada. And I am proud of that. And I'm proud of all the people who were a part of it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Now, you also recently released a Christmas single, and
Oh,
I believe you're going to be giving us a treat this morning.
what? Well, let me tell you now about this song. I recorded this song in
Hmm.
2018. All right,
Yeah.
2018. But I'm like that with music. Music is my life. So I wake up every day. I wake up and I would just make music. I would write.
Hmm.
I would produce. I would record whatever.
Hmm.
And I have so many unreleased material here in the studio. It's
Wow.
like material that right now I got two album ready, finished, mix and everything to release on unreleased stuff, plus other stuff that is unfinished. And that song was sitting there from 2018, and it never dawned on me to release it. But
Hmm.
I have a friend in Grenada, and sometime last month, I think it was, she called me, or she messaged me on WhatsApp, and she said, King, I thought we were going to be getting some kind of parang this year from you, man.
Right.
I said, well, I didn't plan to record anything. I said, but you know what? I have a set of stuff there. Let me look. And then I found the song, and I thought, well, okay. So let me release that. So I sent it to my friend, Mr. Legs, because Mr. Legs and I, we working together now. And I sent it to him, and I said, bro, can you release this for me? And he did, and now, like, this song is problem.
You say it's
This,
problems.
this song is problems. I was on a, a virtual hookup with a radio station
Hmm.
in New York last night.
That's
And
Lion, right? That's with Lion.
Lion.
Lion. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I know he was doing that. Yeah.
And some fellas say now that a bird can fly on one wing, meaning that you can't take one, you got to take more than one.
Right.
So, you know, so the man say, I got to change the song. No, it's not take one on that. He said take five on that.
Take 5 on that, huh?
But with all due respect, though,
Yeah.
this song, and as we on this, I wanna send some love, out to the family of my good brethren, uh, Alistair Alexander. We call him Scratch.
Mhm.
Now, if
Scratch.
you listen to this song, and the last verse of this song, I speak about when I see my partner Scratch jump out from a motor car, knocking a bottle, and the way the fella dress up, I say, oh God, that is trouble, you know? Because once the man in the parang band, the rhythm does be tight. It's
Hmm.
ricketing parang that night. This is the man that I'm singing about. And I only
Hmm.
released the song this year. And shortly, I mean, probably within days, the song was out and he passed away. And he was a guy who was an original member of the Parang band, which we used to go all over and serenade and things like that. So
Yeah.
he will be missed. So I want to may his soul rest in
May he
peace.
rest in peace. Yes. Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. All right, Ajamu. Well, take it away, my friend.
Well,
If you can
but
give us.
so what we doing? Take one on that. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I want
Take
to
one on that, man. Take one on that. Let's
take
give
one on that.
let's give the viewers some
Take
Christmas
one on
cheer.
that. We ain't taking two now. We're taking one.
Or 5.
You
If you say
hear
5,
that?
we can take
Eh?
5
You hear
too.
that?
No, we're not
Hey,
hearing. We're
yeah.
not hearing.
I, the Parang band.
Play
The
the guitar.
Parang
Play the
band.
guitar.
Hey,
Play.
yeah. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. I lay down, but I ain't sleeping. When I hear 50 keep on carrying on like and she back in. So I take a key and it just what the hell is what about? And before I open up the door, I hear fellas start to shout. Take one and that, take one and that, take one and that, take one and that. Let we jam a good parang, take one and that. Tanti Lue come in this year, we go get on, take one and that. You talk on a limele, take one and that. Do like Gumpo and tell them what man say, man say. Oh God, take one and that, take one and that. Take one and that is Christmas. Just take one. Oh! Hey, yeah! Ba-ba-da-da. Ba-ba-da. Oh, yeah! Ba-ba-da-da. They say, boy, we have everything right here, so nobody make no fuss. And you don't tell everybody you's a bachelor for the Christmas. We got coconut water, we got juice and everything. All we missing now is a good acclaim for them parang boy to sing. So take one on that, King Man. Take one on that. Hey! Take one on that. Take one on that. We take a pickup truck and turn into a cooler. So the back and bus drink flowing like water. We don't know it's jumpy and drinks in your drink it. So don't worry yourself, cause we are everything. Take one and hey! Take one and that, Kellogg. Take one and that. Boom! Take one and that. It's Christmas. Just take one and that. Hey! Who is that Fido? Parang in the cars.
That's right. That's right.
Man. Hey! Paparada. Listen, trouble. They say when we finish, straight down in cafe we go in. Because Ransacon and them fellas they have and they waiting. You have a big pot on the fire with all kind of thing inside of it. When the parang bites and them come down, they must get something to eat. So take one on that. Hey! Take one on that. Take one on that. Take one. She even tell Timo he ain't going on parang. Well, you should see how my partner Timo get on. He make a swing and bounce on the bucket of pig sauce. Hey! Then he turn and tells, who is man in the house? Take one and hey! Take one and
That song is trouble, as you say. That song is trouble. That song is trouble, my friend.
Boy, the lady tell the man he ain't going on parang. The man get angry and make a swing with the hand and throw down the whole bucket of pig sauce, you know. And then he asks, who is man in the house?
Right.
Yeah, boy.
So, Ajamu, that song was really, really good. Looking forward to 2021. Finally, what can we expect from you?
Well, boy, I'm so happy and I'm giving thanks that we are almost at the end of 2020. 2020 would be a year that would be remembered, you know, in so many different ways. I am hopeful, you know. I am hopeful. I'm in the process now of getting a song together for release, and it's a song that I recorded a couple of years ago. But it's funny because I have a way with music, you know, and most time I call it inspiration, you know. So I was in the shower one day in last week. I was in the shower, and this song just came to my head. But I knew I did this song. I know I recorded it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't remember releasing it. So I came out of the shower and I told my wife, I said, I was in the shower and this song just came to my head. It's like something that I have to do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I have a jumbie, you know. I have a musical jumbie. So I started
Well, you
looking
did say
out.
I'm a music man, right?
No, I'm a music man, but I have a musical jumbie.
jumbie. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So I started looking to see now where did this song, because I couldn't remember anything about the song except, well, the idea, you know. And the idea was take some time to pray, you know, take some time to pray. And I was like, oh God, I don't remember I releasing the song, but I know I recorded it. So I went all through my email, like people that I would send stuff for, you know, looking, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find that song at all. So here the morning, something say, YouTube. YouTube, check YouTube. I went on
Yeah.
YouTube and it up. Take some time to pray. bang. The song was recorded. The song was on an album. I did an album back the title Magic Land, and that song was recorded. So immediately I went and listened to it and said, no, this song came to me because I got to do it over. All right. So I did a new version now of the song, and I'm getting ready now, preparing it now. It's all the production is done. I just got to do the vocals now and mix it, and then it would be released shortly. Actually, I released a preview last night on YouTube, so you could go and check it out.
I will be checking that out. I definitely
Yeah.
will, and I will be following up with you. I remember a couple of years ago, we filmed. We were doing some filming for a documentary that was produced for your. That would have been your 30/50, I think, or your 30/60. I can't remember which one of them.
50/30. Yeah.
50/30. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about how you always think ahead creatively, right? About
Oh, yes.
what's doing next, because it's all about also maintaining that quality that we've come to know you for, right?
Man, I can't drop the ball with this because
Yeah.
I've the people, they set such high standard for me, and I was reading a book one time, and I remember where someone say that you need to set high standard for yourself. Otherwise, people, the standard they're gonna set for you, it may not be very high, So I grew up I in my career then, I take that that kind of attitude of what I'm doing. I just got to give it my all, I mean, it's got to be at a certain level. And after a while, I've grown, on the people to people to expect, a certain, when they say Ajamu, people expect it should be something of quality. So I am very aware of that. And this is what drives me. So when I sit down to work, even some of the guys who come by me to produce something, and when I'm working with them, some of them, they're really good, you know what I mean? But when they come by me, they would say, and when I start to drill them, they would say, but Jamo, how come the other guys, they never tell me that, Because you got an intonation problem, you know what I mean? You got to fix that, you got to do this. And they would say, well, what? I didn't know that. Because even Alan, Alan and Marlon, because I trained them up,
Yeah.
And Alan once said to me, when they come by me to sing, they do that. I said, no, do it over. But they thought it good. I said, no, do that over. Then ain't cutting it. They said, how come the other guys? They said, well, we got to rerun the show.
Yeah.
But so people have grown to respect me and appreciate me in that way, because they know that I give this thing my all. Music is, hey, you could take away everything, but music. If you take away music from me, Kellon, I'm not even a half a man. Let me tell you this. When I was sick, I asked my family to bring my guitar, right, in the hospital. So they had my guitar and they had it sitting in the corner. And when I moved from hospital into rehab, I never came home. They brought me straight into rehab center. And at the rehab center, there was this notice board, in my room, and they had to write on the notice board what was my primary goal. So when they asked, they said, Mr. Mitchell, what's your primary goal? What do you want? I said, well, I want to get better, but I said, you see that thing in the corner there? That thing in the bag there?
That
Yes,
guitar.
guitar. Yeah, I say,
Yeah.
I just want to play my guitar. And I'm saying this now, and I know people looking at it, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If I cannot play music, I don't know how I'm going to live. I don't know how I'll make it, because music, to me, music is food for my soul. And if I ain't got no soul, I don't want to be here, if I cannot be viable musically, in some way or the other, my life is not for me, So I hope that says it all.
Yes, Ajamu, on that note, any final words for the listeners and viewers?
Well, my final words are to the people, and mainly for the people of Grenada. I mean, I've been sending messages out to the world, but I want to talk to my people of Grenada now, and not even so much those abroad, but those at home. This thing, COVID-19, is very serious. This is a serious thing. And as a matter of fact, this is why I'm not with you. I mean, right now, because I was in Grenada and because of concern, with my health and so, and I had to come up to get my regular checkups. My intention was to return home for Christmas, but because of the situation now, where I mean, this thing is all over the place. My wife wouldn't even
Yes.
let my sister-in-laws come to visit me. You know what I mean? So this is very, very serious. And I think people need to look at this thing with the seriousness that it is and play your part, you know what I mean? Because we could beat this thing, you know what I mean? But people have to be sensible, watch what you do. If this is social distance, don't give me the Donald Trump mentality. You know what I mean? This is real. This ain't no hoax.
Mhm.
So look out for your brother, you know what I mean?
Be your
Care
brother's
for your
keeper
brother. Be
and
your
your
brother's
sister's
keeper.
keeper.
You know,
Hmm.
and if we do that, Grenada is a very small place. And things can get around very, very quickly. You know,
Hmm.
so if we care less, we're gonna pay a cost for it. This thing it's not visible. You cannot see it. Might just have it.
Hmm.
You could contract it by interacting with somebody. So you gotta treat everybody. I'm saying this now. That's what I should say and just stop. Treat everyone you meet like they tested positive for COVID-19.
Yeah.
Treat everyone like that. When I say that, not with a scorn, you know what I mean? But treat them like, okay, well, I don't want to catch this thing. So, you know what I mean? So we good there, get it, you know what I mean? The shoulder bump, the
Elbow
thing.
bump. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, man, them kind of parties and thing. Now is not time to party. Now it's
Yeah.
time to pray. You know,
Mhm.
we should cease on that party mentality for now. All this whole thing about we could stop job. They say no carnival. People say job must play. We cannot have those mentality because at the end of the day, we're gonna die. You know what I mean? Like it or not, if we have those mentality, we're gonna die on what? We're gonna die in a state of ignorance.
Mhm.
So we need to get serious and start thinking about, if not for ourselves, but think about our brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. Kingman, on that note, let me thank you on behalf of the producers of the Bubb Report for spending some quality time with us on this Sunday morning. And I look forward to working with you and interacting with you again whenever the opportunity presents. Happy holidays
Boss,
and Merry Christmas to you and the family.
Merry Christmas to you. But hear what?
Yes,
Please share your contact with through Kitaka,
Kitaka, I will. Yes,
because you
yes.
you're a man. You know that we need to be in touch. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
You know, we need to be in touch. And we got a lot to share.
Hmm. Oh,
So please do
absolutely.
that.
I enjoy. I tell people, me and you go back a long way.
Hey,
You sat on the same school bench with my mom,
yes, man.
and my aunts and so on in Crucial and Primrose. So
Mhm.
I really appreciate that. Ajamo, we can go on, but we have to get to the next
Yeah,
segment.
man. Yeah,
We
and
have
to
business.
all the people out there, I see
Yes,
Jerry. I see my boy Jerry, and I see Ruggles.
yeah,
Hey, Grenada, I love you. You know what I mean? And right
yeah,
now, my heart kind of cold because I really want to be home now. I had a flight
yeah.
and everything good to go, but my wife take my passport. She tell me no. She said no, no, you're not going away.
Right. Stay right there. Stay there.
Yeah,
Stay
not
there, as we
until
say.
such time. It was a pleasure, bro.
All right,
May God
Kingman.
bless
Thank
you.
you.
May God bless Grenada.
All right. All right,
Carriacou
folks,
and
that was
Piggy
Grenada, Carriacou, and Piggy
Carriacou
Bannon.
and
Don't leave
Piggy
them out. That's right.
That's right,
Folks, stay with us. This was a great segment. We will get back to the rest of our panel and the rest of our discussion for the Bubb Report. Stand by.
Please.
The number of active cases in Grenada stands at 45. Comparatively, this number may seem small, but in our local context, it is alarming. The fact is, in the last week, Grenada has literally experienced a doubling of the number of positive COVID-19 cases recorded from mid-March to early December. We have been fortunate thus far that most of the previously diagnosed and current cases are asymptomatic, meaning they are not showing any symptoms. However, one person has now developed pneumonia and another has developed other complications. Thankfully, they do not yet require hospitalization, and our professionals are providing all medical interventions possible to aid in their recovery. All other active cases continue to be closely monitored for the development of symptoms, and similar medical interventions will be provided as necessary.
And let me welcome you back, folks. And now I want to take this opportunity to welcome the panel for this morning's discussion. It is a COVID-19 discussion. I know that some folks are probably tired of hearing these discussions around COVID-19, but it is our current reality and it is our lived experience. And of course, as we saw in the intro and as we saw just now, there is a significant COVID spike in Grenada, a very concerning COVID spike in Grenada. The minister himself said it. There is a serious cause for concern. And so I wish to welcome this morning Mr. Andre Lewis of the Labour Movement, as well as Mr. Ruggles Ferguson, Jerry Rappaport of the Hotel and Tourism Association. He's the president of the Grenada Hotel and Tourism Association. We are going to wait for him to return, and he will be joining the panel. But Andre, I want to start with you. And based on the news that was coming out of Grenada last week, one of the things that stood out to me was the fact that the workers at Sandals don't seem to have any union representation. Now, what does that say about the working conditions at that hotel or hotels that do not have union representation with respect to occupational health and safety?
First of all, allow me to say good morning to you, Kelon, and to
Yes,
Ruggles, the listening public. Yes, but before I go into this, would you permit me just for me to extend condolences on behalf of myself and the Tau family to the Besrick family and friends, because as you may know, Kerry worked at the Spice Island Beach Resort, and that hotel is represented by our union. So I want to extend our condolences to the family. The issue of COVID is extremely serious, and that's reflected in the fact that we are having this discussion this morning. And you indicating that people may be tired on the amount of discussion that we are having. Let me say that not having a union at the workplace does not necessarily mean that the health and safety protocols may not be good. So I want to establish this. But there's absolutely no doubt that having a union or a third party, and in this case, the union would be looking after the interests of the workers, we'd be in a better position to help advise the workers or to ensure that certain things are in place. So in significant workplaces like St. George's University, Grenada, Cable and Wireless, etc., Grenada Breweries, where there are trade unions, and our union represent the workers. We have active occupational safety and health committees. Sandals is known for, and that's our information, and I verily do believe it, as an organizer within the labor movement, where workers were led. These things are difficult to prove many times, but our information that we verily believe to not want to be too close to a trade union. Mm-hmm. And as we said in our report, in our press release to the nation, the Trades Union Council, we are confident that had there been a trade union there, we may not have been able to prevent what had happened, but we have been in a position to try to ensure that more care has been taken, because you may very well find that it is quite possible that there may have been some lapse either by our authorities or Sandals in terms of the supervision of the protocols. Mm-hmm. So having a trade union at the workplace would be extremely important.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, I would turn to you as the president of the Grenada Hotel and Tourism Association. Surely the government spoke ad nauseum, at great length, with respect to consulting the association, and I'm guessing consulting the hotel sector in Grenada with respect to putting the protocols in place. And so what I want to get from you is a sense of your input, the decision quality that in advising the government of Grenada in implementing those protocols. How much of an input did you have as an association in helping the government to craft those?
Pretty fair amount of involvement, especially in the beginning. We were responsible, my CEO, Arlene Friday in particular, spent a lot of time working on protocols early on when everybody was sort of scrambling to figure out what to do. So yes, we've been involved, sometimes more, sometimes less, but I don't think that's an issue really. That's a problem. One thing I wanted to point out, I think, in regard to the situation with Sandals in particular, that I think that people don't understand is that Sandals was the one that called for the government to come in and do the testing. Mm-hmm. Sandals was requesting the testing for 3 weeks before the testing was finally done. Sandals also probably has the most aggressive protocols of any property in Grenada or in the region. Their book of protocols for dealing with housekeeping and whatnot during the pandemic is about 70 some odd pages long. I think there's been a lot of talk about pointing fingers at who's responsible, and is it he, is it she? I think in the end of the day, these are really tough decisions that everybody's making. I personally would not want to be in the shoes of government trying to make the decision between, how do you keep the country going forward? Do you open the borders? Do you keep the borders closed? Do we have the resources to keep our economy going? An economy that we've allowed to become so dependent on tourism. I think that I think we have two issues in front of us. One is the immediate and how we get through this crisis. And then the issue we have in front of us is how do we go forward as a nation to prevent situations like this from happening again, where we end up where one part of our economy is affected adversely and the nation's economy more or less, grinds to a halt in a big way. It really speaks to more of the need for a balanced economy. And what concerns me is I've seen a lot of chatter on Facebook and in social media where people are making a either or kind of thing, we got to abandon tourism and just put everything in agriculture, and I listen to that. And as you know, I'm a farmer as well as I'm involved in tourism. So my feet are in both places. But, what I think is when I hear people saying we should, move away from tourism, just concentrate on agriculture. Well, the next thing I think is, well, what happens if we have a drought at some point? What happens if our agricultural sector falters? And we've now put all of our eggs in one basket, but a different basket. I think the key is really diversity going forward. And so we're better equipped as an economy to deal with situations, whether they be health related or climate related, whatever.
Now, but Mr. Rappaport, this brings me to another question. I remember the last time you appeared on the Bubb Report, you spoke about the mass tourism oriented drive of government, right? With respect to having these massive hotels on the island. Sandals is a massive hotel, okay? And what we found here, at least the fallout from this COVID spike that has been attributed to the hotel, was that the machine of sandals, the global brand of sandals, right, came to the fore, and Sandals said, okay, we are going to pick up and get out of Grenada for a while, right? So, do you think that there is an inherent danger in having these hotels, not necessarily take responsibility for when things like this happen? I'm not suggesting that there is no responsibility there, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't define Sandals as a mega hotel. Okay. When you look at the projects that are on stream in Grenada right now, in Mount Hartman and Levra, those are mega projects. Sandals is a large resort. It's a big difference. Okay. I think the other thing that people have to bear in mind is one of the I mean, look, I was involved in running a hotel for 20 years. My wife was involved in running it for 30 years and was one of the founders of the hotel. It was a small hotel. It was one of the first small hotel projects outside of Grand Anse and Lansapine area. And for all intents and purposes, it was the first sustainable hotel developed in Grenada. But, so I believe in small hotels, but I also recognize the benefit that a resort like Sandals brings to Grenada. Without having a few resorts like Sandals in Grenada, we won't have the airlift that we have. And I think everybody appreciates now being able to get on a plane and fly on JetBlue up to New York, fly to Miami 6-7 days a week on American, flight out of Atlanta once a week on Delta, etc. If before we had a property like Sandals, we didn't have that kind of airlift. I mean, we all remember the days of going on American through Puerto Rico. So I think people need to understand there's a need to have a balanced portfolio of properties. All right. The key to it, in my opinion, is that they're sustainable. Okay. And you have to take a look and see how many can you handle? How many can you bring in before you no longer can market your destination the way you're marketing it? And it's a balancing act, because obviously the more properties you open up, the more, businesses are opened up, the more employment happens. And the government has a responsibility to create jobs. There's no doubt about it. But I'm a big believer in sustainable development, because I think sustainable development speaks to a holistic approach to development, so that all people in society benefit from the development and not just the chosen few.
Okay, let me bring in Ruggles. Ruggles, thank you for joining us this morning. And the reason I brought you here is because at the press conference last week, Sunday, the Minister of Health suggested that there was going to be an investigation into this COVID spike. They will be investigating the hotel or the hotels involved. But my question is, so given the current COVID-19 protocols in the state, if I were to breach protocol, I will be held criminally liable. Okay? I may be charged, or the magistrate may say that, well, if you can't pay the fine, you're expected to serve a prison sentence. Now, if it is found that an institution has not been following the COVID-19 protocols, what civil or criminal penalties are there to hold the institution accountable? Let me unmute your mic.
Morning to my fellow panelists and, of course, listeners and viewers. Kellon, could you just permit me, before I answer that question, to just make a comment in relation to the first question that you posed to President General of TAU, and that is in relation to the hotels and these establishments or other establishments and trade unions, membership of trade unions. Many times business entities see trade union as enemies. And in many instances too, trade unions may do much more to operate and contribute to the development of the work environment, the worker, and see mutual benefits in the relationship. But I just want to make this point, and especially as there was somebody who came in to me this week, actually Thursday, very distressed, a former worker, employee in an entity, one of these big establishments, and she was saying, last month she was dismissed almost summarily, that she worked for 5 years, held a senior position, and just one afternoon, shortly before the end of the workday, she received a letter of dismissal. And of course, the employer gave her all that she is entitled to under the Employment Act. But the front was that she was being made redundant. Now, redundant is when your post is being established, you are downsizing. But the point she was making is that after they sent a few of them home, the new people were employed and took their positions, which in my view then amounts to a form of unfair dismissal. But in relation to the question to Andre, I asked her, I said, but aren't you unionized? And she said, no. I asked how many employees. She said, well, over 100. And I say, you're not unionized? Why? She says, well, the employer does not want a union in the workplace. And that was only on Thursday gone. And then so I started to ask her questions, and she basically said that, listen, if they discover that you want to join a trade union, then they would dismiss you. Now, in any event, she was dismissed. And then she has to fight up as an individual, going behind the labor ministry to try to get some justice. And I just want to make this point, as I made to her. I said, listen, the right to join a trade union is not just an ordinary right under the laws of Grenada. It is a fundamental constitutional right to freedom of assembly and association under Section 11 of the Constitution. In other words, one is a fundamental right. Two, we have a labor code, and that labor code says in very express terms that if an employer interferes with a worker's right to join a trade union of his or her choice, that employer is subject to not just sanctions, but criminal sanctions, including imprisonment. And I just don't understand for the life of me when people say that, listen, they're afraid to join a trade union because they're afraid the employer would dismiss them. So I thought it just interesting, your first question to Andre was, in relation to this issue of our trade unions being part of the workplace. And again, interesting the answer he gave, that yes, if there are unions representing the interests of the workers, and there is further oversight for the workers' interests, you can have some minimizing of a lot of these problems where workers are basically left exposed at the end of the day. And who cares? Because they are just a group of individuals. If you're not brave enough to follow up on it, then it just dies a natural death. And probably you might die a natural death because of the circumstances. So I just thought it was important, to make that point. Joining a trade union is a fundamental right. An employer cannot stop you from joining a trade union. Yes, they might try to discourage you, but that is your fundamental right, and there are criminal sanctions in the law for employers who prevent or try to prevent workers from joining a trade union, including imprisonment, by the way. So it's part of your criminal record. It's just like stealing, it's just like rape, it's just like causing harm, murder. It's a criminal offense. So, but interestingly, nobody has ever been charged under the laws of Grenada, to the best of my knowledge.
Now, Ruggles, is that a case? Is that a case you'll be taking up then? I don't mean to get into the minutia of this.
No. Well. Of course. Well, not in terms of the union, but the dismissal aspect of it.
Correct.
Because here is a young lady with a young daughter. She goes to work one day, and she no issues, no disciplinary issues, but she gets a letter just before the end of the work day, and says, "Listen, go home." She's now unemployed, and other, I suppose, cheaper labor put in her place, and that's it. So the employer is powerful. So I just thought, and in the context, and of course I'll be following up on it, but that's a different issue. But I thought, in the context of the discussion this morning, that is an important point.
Yeah, but let's follow up on my question then.
Yes, the other issue, Kellon, in terms of the investigation and the laws as they exist now. The laws as they exist now, of course, we have a Quarantine Act, and we have the Public Health Act. We also have the Emergency Powers Act. Given that COVID-19 is fluid, that you have just developments taking place from time to time, both these acts, or all these acts, and in particular the Quarantine Act and the Public Health Act, give authority to the Minister of Health to make regulations with respect to those acts. So the regulations that are in place are enforceable, and you refer to protocols. And I just want to make the point that you may have protocols which act as a guide. Once these protocols are part of the law or part of the regulations, then they are part of the law and enforceable, because you can't just charge somebody because of a breach of a protocol that is not necessarily part of the law or part of the regulations. So what the Quarantine Act does, it really addresses our borders and what happens at our borders. And you had in September, you had regulations, I think 58 of 2020, that among other things, when a visitor comes in, then that visitor has to, of course, fill out forms. And part of those forms is the whole the government or the state not liable in the event that you contract COVID. COVID is in the air, and you are coming to Grenada, and that's part of the form. I don't know if they fill those forms. I know it's part of the requirement at the airport, and even the taxi drivers and so who transport people to the hotels and to different places, they have to sign a waiver of liability agreement that they will hold the state harmless in the event, for example, they suffer any losses as a result of COVID. Now, if there is a breach of the regulations, whether by an individual or whether by a company, and that's a point I want to emphasize too, that companies are liable to criminal prosecutions through their directors or officers. So not just an individual, but a company can be charged criminally under our laws and fined just as any natural person.
But Ruggles, in your experience, how many times has the state brought criminal charges against a corporation in Grenada? I've never heard.
Well, interesting.
As a layman, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want folks to say, well, you're not a lawyer, you don't know what you're talking about. But I can't remember any cases, any famous cases where that has occurred.
Well, interesting you ask that, because it dawned on me that I have not known in all my practice, and I have consulted other colleagues of any company being charged with any criminal offense. I'm not aware of any. But all that I'm saying, under the criminal code, you are liable to be charged with a criminal offense just as any individual. So, for example, if the regulations, whether the quarantine regulations or the public health regulations, impose liability on a person to do something, that person includes a company and can face criminal charges, or just like individuals, they can face civil liability. As you know, the distinction between the criminal and the civil law, the criminal law aims to punish for offenses against the state. The civil law pursues compensation. So, for example, if because of the negligence of an individual or a company or the state, somebody suffers loss as a result, then that person who suffers loss can bring an action against the company, the state, or the individual, claiming damages, including general damages, exemplary damages, depending on how serious it is, aggravated damages, and the damages depend on the extent of the loss. So from a legal standpoint, there's always some avenue to address these things legally, whether in relation to a company or an individual.
All right. Folks, I will get back to you guys shortly. I will be taking a quick break. But Andre, I want to get back to you because I know that Tau also represents workers at the Maurice Bishop International Airport. As a disclaimer, journalistic disclaimer here, we did invite Anya Meniz, who is the chair of the board of directors of the Grenada Airports Authority, to appear on the Bubb Report, but she declined. But Andre, we were hearing some complaints that came, through a WhatsApp contact on an email that, workers at the airport were complaining. So I want you to perhaps give us some clarity on that when we return, folks. And Mr. Rappaport, I also have some questions for you. Stand by. We will be right back.
Since losing that seat, what have you been up to?
Now, Mr. Attorney General, this particular provision sounds unconstitutional. But why were there not consultations before moving forward with the proposals? Did they say what will happen when you guys get to St. Vincent? Because there are pressing socio-economic issues that I would want to address with you.
In the hyper-information age of social media, the Bubb Report knows there is more to the story. We have questions and demand answers. We strive to hold the powerful accountable and tell an unbiased, contextual story. You know what happened. We let you know why it happened. There is always more to the story. The Bubb Report, streaming every Sunday at 11 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
All right, folks, welcome back. So, Andre, the workers who you represent at the airport, were you hearing complaints? Let us unmute your mic, Andre. You need to unmute your mic there, brother. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, my
Go ahead.
apologies. Yeah. We do represent workers at the Maurice Bishop International Airport. That's with the Grenada Airports Authority. As you may know, there are a number of different workers down there. We have our health and safety officer has been constantly engaging the different workplaces that are high risk, and in particular the airport. Whatever concerns that we have heard, and I must be very blunt here and say that over the past week or two, I have not heard of any direct concerns that is untoward from our members on the airport. As I said, that we represent the workers who are working directly with the airport authorities. There are many different set of workers down there. Whenever we get any reports or concerns, we normally intervene. We were very concerned in the beginning, and still is concerned. The fact that the airport is where people will come in, and therefore we have been trying to ensure that the protocols that have been identified, the PPEs that have been identified, are made available, and that workers are kept abreast. I should also let you know that we had cause to write the airport seeking some information That has not yet come forth. And that has not to do with any specific requests or concern over the past 2 weeks or so, but having to do with wanting to ensure that all that are supposed to be in place are put in place. So specifically to the question as to whether or not we got any reports of concerns from our members in the recent past week or two, I am not aware of that. And had that been the case, I ought to have known. But only to say, repeat once again, that we have been paying particular attention to the airport, and we have a very good shop steward system on the airport. That's the importance of the union, because as union officers, as those of us engaged in the secretariat, we are not able to be on the ground, but there were a very vibrant shop steward as a union representative at the workplace, who themselves are employees at the airport. Yeah. So who from time to time will raise whatever concerns that there are and will make the different intervention. But no, I'm not saying that there isn't, but I am not aware of. And if there was, I ought to have.
Jerry, I would get back to you. Your colleague over there, and I'm going to share the screen, Mr. Mike Maransky, I believe is his name. He wrote an op-ed in the Now Grenada publication, and I thought he was able to strike a good balanced tone with respect to what we're currently experiencing. And I'm going to quote from the article. He says, Grenada may be closing some more businesses and more widespread lockdown may be necessary given the spike of new cases. I have absolutely no doubt that the government of Grenada wants to do its very best, and no doubt that we all want them to. Our lives and our livelihoods depend on us all staying united in this fight. The virus does not play politics. We're all in this together, whether you're working or laid off or unemployed, in school or in prison, local or foreigner. Quote, lock them up and find them, unquote, should not be our only focus now. Penalties for breaking the rules are necessary, no doubt. However, quote, a blame game, unquote, mentality will not get us through the pandemic more safely. Is that the approach that the Hotel and Tourism Association is adopting now? You're calling for cooler heads to prevail at this time? Jerry?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's what I would call for at all times. I mean, I think that, one of the problems, and, not just inherent to Grenada, but the world we live in today, there's a lot of noise, you know what I mean? And not a lot of, constructive conversation going on. And some of the things that I've heard and seen in the media over the last couple of weeks, I just find incredible, quite frankly. The pointing fingers, like, Mike referenced, I mean, Sandals, I can tell you for a fact, I know for a fact that Sandals, is not looking to, pull something over on the country. Whether or not the protocols that the government agreed to with them were sufficient, that's up for discussion, as the protocols that they've put in place all over the country are open for discussion. But I think it's important to have, reasonable discussions. When I see things in the press, for instance, about people questioning why a Grenadian national has to fill out paperwork to come back into Grenada, which is related to health right now, I find that very irresponsible. It's not just tourists that are potentially bringing the virus back to Grenada. It's the diaspora as well, and we have to be realistic about this. We have to work together. There's no point in wasting time trying to point fingers and say, oh, this one's to blame and that one's to blame. The issue at hand is, how do we deal with this situation? How do we deal with this?
But also, how do we, correct, but also, how do we hold people accountable, right? How do we hold institutions accountable? Because I make this point in the context of the fact that if a returning Grenadian national were to break protocol, were to break quarantine when they get back to Grenada, they are held criminally responsible. And I think Grenadians, I think the discussion and the narrative has to be one of not only personal responsibility, but also of institutional responsibility. Without also the finger pointing and the name calling is also not helpful. We can agree to that. So go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you.
Kellen, that being said, bear in mind, at the opening of your show, you ran a clip of Anselm Clouden speaking to this very subject. And, it's, Sandals was using protocols that were approved by the government. Okay, that's a lot different than if they're breaking protocols. I don't know if they're breaking protocols or not. I'm not there 24/7. I'm not there. I will be honest with you. I've gone around the island as, you know, as a resident. I've been in places that were following protocol to a T. I went to other places where I was really surprised at how lax their protocols were. You know, I think that's the nature of human nature. And like you say, if individuals are going to be held responsible, yes, I agree. If businesses are found not to be in compliance with protocols, there should be, there should be penalties. You know, but I think it's important that people understand. I mean, I'll give you another example of this similar kind of thing. When I went to the consultation a month or so ago about the range development project in Los Angeles, you know, when the representative from Range responded initially to the charges that the community was bringing in terms of the way the environment was being handled and what the way the work was being done, et cetera, the gentleman representing Range made a really solid point right off of the bat. He said, "Hey, we're only doing what the government is allowing us to do." Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have
Jerry.
with it.
Correct. Yes.
So
Now,
the point I'm trying to tell on is that the government sets the protocols. The institutions are responsible for paying attention to the protocols. Yes, if somebody's breaking protocols, whether it be an individual or an institution, there should be repercussions and penalties. No doubt about it. There should be no difference in.
Correct. Now, Mr. Rappaport, the other issue here, and Kimberly brings up that point as well, in which, and I'm going to quote her now. She said in one of his last statements, and she's referencing here Minister Nicholas Steele, reference corridor agreements, quote unquote, that have been made with select number of hotels and resorts in the south of the island. Jerry, can you speak to why some hotels / resorts are being held to a different standard, or is there a different standard? Because I think that is also a point of confusion. I would not say contention, but a point of confusion. Why do you have these corridor arrangements for some, whereas for other hotels, then those arrangements are not in place?
Yeah, well, I can only speak to the government's, response and mindset to it was that they felt that there were properties that could be treated in a way that could be a little different from some of the other properties because of their physical plan and their ability to, operate in that context. And honestly, I would tell you as a citizen of Grenada, that's up for discussion. I think that's definitely a point that, one could question. But I think the real key is that the testing is imperative. And I think also the following of protocols. And I think that we, if we're going to have this discussion about the responsibility of the hotel sector, and by no means am I minimizing the responsibility of the tourism sector to be responsible in the dealing with the protocols, we also have to address our own society as a whole, because people are not taking this seriously right now. Okay. I mean, out here in St. David's, I see so many people walking around without masks. I see people walking around with masks below their nose, hanging off their ear. People are not taking this seriously.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I have a couple of friends in Grenada who, traveled for the holidays, and they're saying the same thing. That's what they're observing there as well. Go ahead.
My fear is that everyone's waiting for it to get really bad, so we end up being locked down again to take it seriously.
Well, I hope it would not get to that place.
I hope not. I think it would be really sad if that's where we ended up again. But it comes down to the same old thing all over the world. I mean, I'm an American by birth. I see what's going on in the States. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
That half of the population.
Ruggles, I will get back to you. Thank you for waiting in the wind there. But Ruggles, one of the other things that we heard is that COVID positive patients were evacuated from the country by Sandals, allegedly. Again, I'm saying this allegedly. I'm going to cover myself here legally, although I have a lawyer here who I'm sure would be happy with representing me pro bono. But Ruggles, I mean, how is that possible? How could that happen?
Right. Yes, Karan, I've heard so too. It's really difficult to believe that that would happen, because essentially what it means is that those people who left would have exposed others in their path, whether in the process of leaving Grenada, one, or two, entering whichever destination country that they are going to. So, at least it's an act of serious irresponsibility on their part, and they would be subject, no doubt, to whatever laws on entering in their own country, their own
But
destination
that is
country.
correct, Ruggles. But Grenada also has an immigration authority, right? So
Right.
I can't just get up and decide if I am under some kind of surveillance that I'm going to flee the country.
Right. So the question really is how did they manage to do that? I'm not sure if it's true. As I said, I've heard so, and no doubt you have heard so. You have posed the question.
And we also have some reporting from Now Grenada, an article in a byline written by Linda Straker, a journalist with the Now Grenada. Yes, proceed.
Right.
Sorry.
Because in the regulations, there is the what is referred to as geofencing, using GPS equipment for those persons who are supposed to be in quarantine to be able to identify whether they have broken the boundaries or crossed the boundaries. So it's a bit difficult, at least without hearing the other side, how persons who are positive, and that obviously ought to be investigated, and based on the results of the investigation, then appropriate action be taken. Because this then would not just be negligence, because negligence is based on some kind of duty. You may have breached a duty, not understanding the consequence and all of these things. But if you then leave and you have it, it's contagious. Therefore, it means that you committed an act deliberately, knowing the serious consequences that particular act carries. So, but of course, if they have left Grenada and they are beyond the shores of Grenada and beyond the reach and jurisdiction of Grenada, then it will be Grenada's obligation to inform whatever the destination country was, so that country can take appropriate action, and of course to find out from here whether others colluded with them to ensure that they were able to leave. But anyway you take it, it's something that is very serious, and it amounts to a breach of our regulations.
All right, let me get to some comments under the pike. KPAT GD responding to an earlier comment that you made, Mr. Rappaport. She's saying, thank you, Mr. Rappaport. I've yet to hear about any changes to the current protocols that would reduce exposure to workers at the hotels. And again, we also have to appreciate that the COVID-19 pandemic is new territory for everyone. And I think that is something that is missing as well, right? This is not a perfect science, and Grenada's public health system is not necessarily the best public health system in the world. Okay, it is still a developing country. And I think we have to be cognizant of the bill of goods that we're working with. But, that point also needs to be established here. And Jose Ernesto says, why our government not tell us what protocol was broken when Sandals denied and accused the government of lies? So yes, Mr. Ernesto, the government has yet to respond to the Sandals letter that was published last week. Dixie Ann Purcell says, so tell me why an individual can be charged and not a company or the government. So what? Double standards is the norm, is the question she's asking. And then Dixian, I think she's responding to another person here. And then she goes on to say, someone broke the protocol somewhere. This didn't happen by a magic spell. So who is responsible? Again, we're going back there. Gentlemen, stay with us. I'm going to come back for some wrap-up comments. I know that you guys decided to stay with me today, and I thank you for that. But folks, we'll be taking one final break, and we will be right back.
On Sunday, December 13th, Grenada's health ministry announced a cluster of 26 COVID-19 cases, some of which have been linked to the Sandals resort there. The positive cases include guests and employees, and since then there's been reports that some of the evacuated guests at the hotel may be transferred here. But Tourism Minister Dominic Fede could not confirm or deny the reports. What he did say is that whoever arrives in St. Lucia will be subjected to stringent protocols to ensure the safety of visitors and citizens alike.
We have a very, very comprehensive and rigorous medical facility that we've built at the airport, where when you come through, you have to present a COVID-19 negative test. You have to make sure as well that if we're not satisfied with the test that you've presented, we will test you at the airport. You then go on to a COVID-trained taxi driver. And then when you get to the hotels here in St. Lucia, we make sure that there are protocols in place to manage your vacation.
The minister added that St. Lucia should learn from Grenada's experience and that it should serve as a reminder that strict protocols need to be observed.
What we are doing is trying to see how we can learn from what's happening all over the Caribbean. There are outbreaks in countries all the time. And so what we want to do is to make sure that we use this as a reminder that the protocols, we need to abide by them, we need to enforce them.
The minister was speaking to reporters just prior to Tuesday's parliamentary sitting. For the DBS News World, I am Don Nicholas.
Welcome back, folks. And we're almost out of time, but I wanted to give this esteemed panel of gentlemen an opportunity to end with some final comments. Mr. Ferguson, I'll start with you.
Okay, thank you, Kellon. And, the general theme of all the comments is that COVID-19 is the common enemy. COVID-19 knows no boundaries, whether political, social, or other boundaries. And therefore, we have an individual and collective responsibility to deal with it. Though, if you just allow me briefly, we're talking about protocols. So just give an example, yesterday, based on an observation, I was at a particular place at the mall, and no doubt that entity was observing protocols. So as you enter, the security stopped and said, point to what turned out to be a book to sign, and also to do the hand sanitizing stuff and so. And, you put your information, your personal information, and so there, your contact number, no doubt for contact tracing. So the business is following all the protocols. No doubt has 2 extra security guards to make sure that it's implemented. A lady comes along and she's about to enter the business place. And security points to her, just as the security is doing to everybody. And then she audibly let out a loud stoops. And reluctantly went across, stretched out her hand, meaning for the sanitizing. So the other security says, well, listen, you have to sign the book, right? And of course, she just walked off, right? She stoops again and she walked away. No. And I'm saying, it's just sometimes when all these criticisms are being leveled, it's a regular security guy and these folks who have to implement this and who have to face the daily abuses of members of the public, because nobody wants their freedoms His or her freedom to be
infringed upon. Yeah. Mhm.
No one wants his privacy to be, you know, you're going to a restaurant, you have to sign and sign. But that's just what the period calls for. That's what the protocols, regulations, not just in Grenada, all over the world. So really and truly, to beat COVID, does not depend on any single entity or group, but it depends on what each and every single one of us do individually and collectively in our respective areas of work to try to encourage. And even when we criticize, and criticism is important, and folks have to be prepared to be open to criticism. But even when we criticize, we need to urge people to follow the protocols. Because on the one hand, people won't want to follow the protocols, and when something happens, then there would be the loudest in their criticisms of what should and should not have been done, and then blame other people. So I just want to say, Kellon, you know, in keeping with the general theme of what people, the points others made, is that we must recognize, irrespective of regulations, irrespective of protocols, we read the news and we look at television every day, over 76 million confirmed cases in the world. In the United States, where we have flights coming on a weekly basis, close to 18 million confirmed cases, over 320,000 deaths, probably more than 3 times the population of Grenada. And we don't want community spread in Grenada because we just can't handle it. We don't have the capacity. And therefore, what is important is prevention. Prevention. And that is where each and every single one of us have a role to play and to encourage others about to follow these protocols. And in that, though I don't want to call names, I went to a particular supermarket yesterday, and I was very pleased, again, though an additional inconvenience, to see that supermarket taking the names, no doubt for contact tracing, again, of everybody entering that supermarket and ensuring that the protocols are followed. That's an additional expense. That's an inconvenience, but it is important nonetheless. And we need to commend people out there who try to follow the protocol. And we pull each other up, basically, when it happens. I try to keep on my mask, but I was rushing out the door just about 2 weeks ago. And then when I made a few steps up the road, I realized I'd taken off my mask. I didn't have it on.
Well, you were lucky you didn't get a ticket from the police.
Well, indeed. But so I'm saying, you know, we may fall short, but it's important that as a population, we pull each other up and we make sure, notwithstanding the inconvenience, that these protocols are followed. And bear with the essential workers, bear with the security officers, bear with the police officers when they try to enforce it, because, you know, some people just abuse others, ordinary human beings who try to ensure that the protocols are followed. So thank you, Kellon, for the opportunity to make these comments.
Absolutely. And your contribution is noted. Mr. Rappaport, I'll give you an opportunity to wrap up. Yes.
Well, I mean, Mr. Ferguson just sort of hit the nail right on the head, in my opinion.
He stole your thunder there.
Say what?
He stole your thunder.
Yeah, well, you know, so, I mean, you know, I'm a big believer in that, you know, the only way democracy works, period, is that by individual participation and responsibility. And in the times that we're living in right now, it just is, as Mr. Ferguson referenced, it just really speaks to a much higher need, because we're in a serious situation that we don't have the resources if we got community spread in a big way to deal with in Grenada, and we have to be really careful. And it requires that everybody, you know, individuals, businesses, government, everybody's got to work together to deal with this. This is the only way, that we can go forward. The GHTA as an association has always been a big believer in the reality that the best way that we can function in our industry is through a public-private partnership that's solid, regardless of what government's in place. Because no, the government can't do it on its own. The private sector can't do it on its own, and the people can't do it on their own. We all have to work together, and this is a serious situation. I was up in New York in March, left right before it really, really blew up, and I could see what was coming, and I was so relieved to get back to Grenada. And I think we've been incredibly fortunate. When you look around the world and see the pain and hardship that people are going out, and dealing with on a daily basis throughout the world, we've been extremely fortunate, and it behooves us all to do whatever we can to try to ensure that we keep Grenada in the place that it is for as long as possible, and it's not forever. I mean, it's a life or death situation, and the more we all take it seriously, the easier this will be for all of us, and the more success we'll have getting through it.
All right, Andre, I'll end with you. But before you wrap up, Mr. Lewis, the president of the Senate had a mouthful. I don't know, I'm putting you on the spot here, but he had a mouthful about making sure that others get bread while you're fighting for your bread. What was that about? Was that some...
Well, I think his best place to answer this. What I could tell you is that I'm sure that everyone is aware that the labor movement and the workers have always ensured that we make sacrifices to ensure that we all have bread. Yes, and this period is nothing new. Yeah, so we will continue to do what we have been doing, making the sacrifices, making sure that we ourselves have bread, and the authorities do not squander the scarce resources.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, but let me give you a chance to wrap up, sir.
Sure, thank you very much, Carol.
Yeah.
I want to identify with what Ruggles have said and Mr. Rapporteur, and just permit me to just, in relation to the airport authorities, I just spoke to a health and safety officer and confirmed what I have said. However, there were a few months ago, we had concerns about workers being possibly exposed and been traveling on the same transport. And I'm making this point so that all workplaces, all individuals can learn from this. If there is any case that any one of us have any bit of concern as to whether or not we may have been exposed to some possible contamination, for want of a better word, we should avoid at all costs public transportation. We should avoid at all costs exposing ourselves to others. So in cases like these, it is better to make contact with the Ministry of Health, to be advised as to how to transport yourself from your workplace or to your home. And in the case of a workplace, the employer will have that responsibility, added responsibility, to ensure that that happens properly. Secondly, we had also written to the airport authority, asking them for a copy of their workplace protocol. The fact that they are at the gateway, one of the gateways to Grenada, we are yet to receive that protocol. And this is of concern to us. Thirdly, if I may say, it is also important, Kellogg, in my view, that the people that were allowed, and I'm saying allowed to leave Sandals, first and foremost, in a smallest sense, immediately Sandals must be held responsible first and foremost. Because if they were aware, as they ought to be aware, that there were concerns about these people awaiting the results of tests, they have a responsibility to ensure that they are kept within the compound. Secondly, at the outer ring now, the state, the Ministry of Health, and the other authorities have a responsibility to have ensured that even if Sandals also were to fall down on their responsibility, they ought not to have been allowed to get out of the country. Because also important on this, the question that you ask about responsibility, whether or not it's criminal responsibility from the company or the individual. What if, for instance, at the end of the day, the investigation that has been carried out shows that one out of the people who left deliberately or willfully or negligently, knowingly contributed to the exposure of our workers? It therefore means that they are not here to face whatever penalties that our locals may have been exposed to for breaking the protocol. So this has serious implications. Plus, it speaks to the aspect of trust. It speaks to that aspect of our people having confidence in the system. And therefore, this call is made to all of us, but in particular, those who have that specific responsibility to enforce the protocol and to ensure they do what is right. I cannot end, Kalon, without expressing my thoughts and concerns and that of the labor movement with all the people who have been impacted by COVID, and in particular the workers at Sandals in this recent Sandals cluster spread. In particular, our friends, families, and relatives of the village that have been identified in St. Andrew. In particular, the people who have been exposed and identified from the school in St. Andrew. Our thoughts are with you. We ask people not to discriminate against them. We ask, let us all show our love and our support and understanding for them in this particular period, and to call upon all of us to follow the protocol. Because at the end of the day, there are serious challenges that we are confronted with. There are people who will be impacted more than others, apart from the health issue, the issue of our economics, the issue of our ability to survive and to be exposed to the health system that we have had concerns about even before COVID. We need to be extremely careful and not to put our frontline workers and all workers at further risk. I want to wish everyone all the very best for the seasons, and let us do all to ensure that our health, safety, well-being, and economics are adequately looked after within the context of COVID.
Mr. Lewis, thank you so much. Senator Lewis and Mr. Rappaport, you know, I was not expecting to see you gentlemen back so soon, but the circumstances on the ground call for your appearance here again. And Ruggles, as usual, thank you. You have enlightened us significantly this morning, and this has been a very fruitful and great discussion. On behalf of the production team, the producers, the researchers at the Bubb Report, this is not a job that I do by myself. I have a team of dedicated people on the ground who help me put this program together every week. And so I want to acknowledge them as well during this time. Their sacrifice and their efforts are noted. Let me also thank members of my audience, viewers and listeners, for your continued participation and viewership of the Bubb Report. Next week, we will be doing a year in review of the big stories that we covered here on the report. Let me just also make the point that, again, the Bubb Report started to fill the void left by the late, great George Grant. And I do hope to continue the work that I'm doing in 2021 with respect to this program. For me, it is about public service, and it is also about ensuring that we are able to eliminate the issues intelligently for the Grenadian people. So once again, on behalf of myself, on behalf of the team, I wish all Grenadians a happy holiday and a Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Bye-bye.
Since losing that seat, what have you been up to?
Now, Mr. Attorney General, this particular provision sounds unconstitutional, but why were there not consultations before moving forward with the proposals? Did they say what will happen when you guys get to St. Vincent? Because there are pressing socio-economic issues that I would want to address with you.
In the hyper-information age of social media, the Bubb Report knows there is more to the story. We have questions and demand answers. We strive to hold the powerful accountable and tell an unbiased, contextual story. You know what happened. We let you know why it happened. There is always more to the story. The Bubb Report, streaming every Sunday at 11 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.